Hello, I'm Elliot Hack, Community Relations Associate here at University House Wallingford. Before we begin today's presentation, Ike Elmo would like to share a little bit about our community and our speaker today.
Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you, Elliot. In affiliation with the University of Washington Retirement Association, University House Wallingford residents benefit from the partnerships developed with the University of Washington School of Nursing, Social Work, and Pharmacy to deliver innovative programs designed with healthy living and lifelong learning in mind. If you are considering making a move to a retirement community, you are welcome to arrange a visit and explore everything we have to offer, including future health options and how our wait list works. And now the main event. We are so happy to have Mr. Morris here with us today. Last time he was here at University House, he commented on our beautiful garden court. That got all the residents all excited, and our garden committee made sure that they know he was coming back again soon to keep everything so nice and beautiful and pristine. I would like to invite all of you to come and see our beautiful garden and our beautiful community at University House. Ciscoe Morris is a gardening expert, TV and radio personality, and author who is well known in the Pacific Northwest. His book, Ask Ciscoe, was a bestseller, and he recently came out with a new book, Oh La La, last year. When he is not speaking or writing, Ciscoe is often gardening at his home in Northeast Seattle or off hosting garden tours around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ciscoe. We're so glad to have you. Thank you.
Oh la la. Hey, it's great to be here. I wish I was there with all you folks. That's always my favorite. But hey, times are the way they are, and Zoom talks work pretty darn well. You could just pretend you're watching me on TV. Okay, hey, a few things to let you know. I'm going to give away a couple of copies of my books today. So you'll get your choice, which one you want to get. So this is Ask Ciscoe. I wrote this, I think, 8 years ago. I don't remember. It's a question and answer book. It has the question for every, or the answer, I should say, for every question about gardening except for deer. Somehow I forgot deer, but I put that in my new book, so don't worry about it. So this is a Q&A, a lot of humor in it, but very accurate. And it was the #1 selling garden book in the United States for a while. Lord, la, la, la. But this is my new book. You might want to choose this one because the stories, the short stories about gardening that are really funny. Well, I think they're funny. I laughed when I wrote them, so I hope you'll like them too. So lots of fun stories in there and a lot of gardening advice to boot. So I don't know how well this one's selling, but hopefully really well. Okay, now to start, and I'm going to give those books away at the end. I'm going to give 2 books away and you get your choice which one you want. And then we'll get your address and I'll sign those special to the lucky winners and send them to you. But you're going to have to solve my tough Ciscoe Garden Stumper question. You know how hard those are. So be ready. You're going to have to be sharp. I hope you ate your Brussels sprouts last night. Okay, so first thing I want to do is tell you something that you probably don't know about me. See, I love peonies. And look at this peony right here. This one is called Buckeye Bell. This is the best herbaceous peony you can get on earth. Look at that sucker. Is this beautiful or what? And so if you can get this peony, get this peony. Now, you might be surprised to learn that peonies are the reason that I became a gardener. Yep. And the reason is because I lived when I was a kid, and I was 10 years old, We live next to the prize peony grower of all Wisconsin. I grew up in Wisconsin, you know. And so the woman next door, she won the blue ribbon at the big state fair every year practically for her fantastic peonies. And her whole backyard was full of them. Well, I was quite a star little league player when I was 10 years old. I played third base and I had a great batting average. And it just so happened that all her peony buds 2 days before the big state fair were just getting ready to open. They were big and solid and right in the strike zone. I went over there with my baseball bat and hit every bud for a home run. And my punishment for doing this, it was quite a story. The whole neighborhood knew about this. I was not a popular kid, to say the least. My punishment for doing it was I had to go work with her almost all summer long in her garden. And when I saw the way she looked at me every time I came over to work with her, I realized there's something special about plants. So that got me interested in plants and made me a great gardener. So even though I gave her the worst summer of her whole life, thanks to her. Now, I want to show you a really cool tool right here. And this is a tool that you're going to want to get. I don't work for this company, all right, but this is a great tool. So I'm going to tell you the name. You might want to write this down, okay? This is a short cut and hold pruner. So cut and hold pruner, and you can get it online from the Wildflower Seed Company. So it's wildflower-seed.com, wildflower-seed.com. Here's why I love this guy. Okay, so it turns 2 ways. And the only thing wrong with this is sometimes I forget which way to turn it, then it doesn't work the way I planned. So let's say this, I hate to do this to this beautiful peony, but I gotta do it. So let's say this flower is starting to get over the hill and it's gonna detract from, you know, how your peony looks. So you need to deadhead that, right? So with this tool, you could just reach in there, cut it, it holds it, and whoop, you drop it right into whatever container. Think of when you got to prune roses, how good this does. Anything you got to prune, you're deadheading your plants in your garden, you know, you don't have to walk in there and tramp all over the soil and everything. If your garden's like mine, it's so full of plants, you can't get in there anyway, you reach in there and get it. So I should probably get a commission for selling these for this guy. He gave me this at the San Francisco Flower and Garden Show. I was down there speaking and he goes, I got a tool for you. And I'm like, yeah, you're trying to sell it to me. He goes, no, I'll give it to you. I'm convinced you're going to like it so much, you'll sell $1 million for me. He was right. I've shown this on TV so many times, but I love it. They have long reach ones too, and extending ones that you could use for wisteria or all kinds of things. I have every one he makes. Lasts forever, good tool. Okay, I just wanted you to know about that. Okay, I'm gonna do a pot right now, and then we'll take the first questions. Oh, there is something I want to show you first though, and that is, so peonies, you know the problem with peonies, they flop over. You get a big fat flower on the end, the thing goes, you know, and the whole plant just kind of falls over. So you got to find a staking system that really works. The other thing is, if you're like me, I grow Delphiniums. I don't have one to show you right now because they haven't started blooming or anything yet. But Delphiniums, I grow Delphinium elatum. My favorite is cobalt blue. And they grow 6 feet tall. And so when you grow something like that 6 feet tall, how do you stake it? And, you know, before I figured out this great system, every time I staked them, you know, they either have so many stakes and ropes around them, they look like a hostage out there in the front yard, you know, or the wind would blow them right over. And even when I thought I had them staked perfect, the wind blew them over a lot. So I've developed this system right here this is the work of a genius, if I do say so myself. So you can buy these circle grids. They sell them in nurseries. And they come with these connecting wires, I call them. You stick these in the ground, you stick that on there. There's 3 of these to hold it up. And then you put it up there before the plant grows through it. The problem is, one, this is going to be at 1.5 feet tall. A 6 foot tall spiky plant could blow over really easy in the wind. So they sell different sizes of these. So what you want to do is buy one that's like this, then buy a wider one that's going to go above this one. So you stake this one at 1.5 feet because you're going to shove that into the ground. The next one you're going to put at 3 feet, and it's going to be wider. And so now there's only one thing that goes wrong with this system. These connecting wires aren't worth a boodle hopper in July, you know. So what you got to do is you got to get a gardener's best friend here, these zip ties. So I'm sure you know these things. You can buy them at hardware stores. Sometimes nurseries have them, and you hook that through there, pull it tight. And so what I do is I zip tie these connecting wires in there so there's no way they can get loose. And I do it at both levels. And I'll tell you what, my Delphiniums never fall over anymore. They look fantastic. I thin them out to about 7 main stalks going through. Your peony, just got to get these up before the peony grows through it. That's all you got to do. And boy, that's the best staking system you'll ever get. You have to give me full credit for figuring this out when people come by and go, you are a genius for that. Okay. All right, I want to do a pot now, if you don't mind. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And there. So, you know, because container gardening is the funnest kind of gardening. In the United States, in the last 5 years, us gardeners have spent $5 billion on pots, soil, fertilizer, and plants. So, oh la la. And you know why I love it? Because it's like doing a whole garden in a pot. So even if you live where all you have is a balcony or something, it doesn't matter, because you could do a really, you know, you can get like 40 pots. But it's really fun. You get to use your skill as a gardener and artistry. So first of all, let me show you this pot I got. Now, this, I only paid $25, but it's a pretty cool plastic pot. But I gotta tell you the truth, I bought this just so I could do things like this to show, because I think these ceramic pots they sell are so great. When I first moved to Washington in 1971, you could hardly get a ceramic pot. People would go to China and bring them back. Now they're cheap. They come from all sorts of countries. They're so wonderful. So, and make sure it's got a good drain hole. You see that nice drain hole in there. So, and by the way, this is full of packing material because I didn't want to do soil and make a giant mess and everything. I just kind of want to be able to talk about it, show how to do it, okay? So the first thing you got to think about is the thriller. So the thriller is the centerpiece for the pot. And if the pot's going against the wall, I might put the thriller in the back of the pot. But in this one, I'm going to put it in the middle. Now, there's this is a Hebe Amy, which is a really beautiful plant. It's got this kind of dark foliage, beautiful purple flowers that last a long time. So I want that for the centerpiece. It should be in proportion with the size of the pot. It's a little small, but I know it's going to grow fast. So, and they don't grow too tall. So this plant, this centerpiece is going to be in perfect proportion to the plant. I've seen where people put like 8-foot plants in a pot and then plant around it. And it can either look out of proportion or it can almost look like it's going to blow over in the wind. People walk by and they get out of the way, you know. So, all right. So the centerpiece we always call the thriller. There's tons of things I could have done here. I could have got one of those great. Have you ever seen those? What the heck? Wilma Goldcrest, California, Monterey cypress. So those are really pretty and beautiful. They're golden. And I thought about doing that with this, but I decided to do something totally different today. But if you used to watch me on Gardening with Cisco with Megan Black, that was Megan's favorite plant. Not because of the beautiful texture, not because of the beautiful shape or color. No, because it smelled like lemon pledge. Go figure. She must have had no dust in her house. That's all I know. Okay, so I've got this beautiful centerpiece. Now I need to put something around it. Now the key thing when you're making a pot, you want different textures, different forms. Two plants that look alike next to each other are boring. So we're always looking for contrast whenever, and that's out in the garden, in your pot, wherever you're doing it. So wow, I found this beautiful hosta. Let me see the name of this guy. June Fever. Oh la la, I have June Fever today. It's kind of windy and cold out, but I'm so happy we're getting this rain. I can't tell you. So this is our first filler we're going to put in there. So that's what we call these plants that we put around the side. So I think, look at the contrast of the different shapes of the leaves, the different shape of the plant. It's perfect. But I want some fragrance in there, and I kind of want to play off this purple color. Oh, this is Heliotrope, and you couldn't see it, but my pant legs just rolled up and down when I sniffed this. This smells so good. And butterflies are nuts for this plant, so you'll see them come in for that. So that's nice. Okay, so now it gets a little tricky for me to squeeze all these in here, but I'm going to do the best I can. Okay, there we go. Good. All right, now I want some color in here, of course, and I want some color that kind of snaps out at you. So I am going to use, now these, I need to deadhead this pretty good. Now what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to just deadhead the dead part in there, because I don't need to do the whole 9 yards yet. But once this flower doesn't look good anymore, I'm going to snap it way down at the bottom of this. It's really important to keep deadheading. If you don't, all plants know they're on Earth to reproduce. If you let them flower, that's fine. But if you let them go to seed by not pulling off the spent flower, then they go, I did what I'm on Earth for. I made seed, I've raised a family, I've reproduced, I can kick back, enjoy a little fertilizer, enjoy the sunshine, get a good tan. Hey, I forgot to tell you something too. Two things I want to mention, and that is before, the first thing you got to do is buy the best potting soil you can get. Edna's Best. Edna's Blue Ribbon Best Potting Soil is my favorite. It's totally sold out at every nursery. I can't get it. It's driving me crazy. Now, I just talked to my local nursery. They said, we can't get it at all. Went to a really big nursery. They said, well, maybe Tuesday. Oh, la, la, next Tuesday. Jeez, and I bet there'll be a line of 50 cars waiting for that. So get the best potting soil you can get. If you don't know which, when you go to your nursery, say, what's the best stuff you got? They'll tell you because it's the most expensive anyways. So put that in there. The other thing you need to do is you got to fertilize it. So I mixed in a cup of fertilizer into this. Now I use organic fertilizer, and this is just one kind. I mean, I use a number of different kinds, but so organic fertilizer is way better than synthetic. So synthetic fertilizer like Scott's or Lily Miller, and I'm not cutting those guys down. They make good products. The problem is they're made out of petroleum and they add minerals to it, and it's very salty. Now, it's fine. If you use the exact right amount, you'll never have a problem using that stuff. But if you mess up and add too much, it can actually cause an imbalance in the soil and suck the moisture right out of the roots of the plant. It burns the living tweedle out of them, you know, because when you put in synthetic fertilizer, it's all available to the plant right now. And it's going to make them grow like mad too. If you use organic fertilizer, it's made out of things that were living once, so duck feet, turkey bills, you know, and then they add a bunch of other minerals to it. When you put that in the soil, the plant doesn't even know it's there. You can't make any use of it at all until the microorganisms that are in the soil eat it up. It goes through them, then it slowly becomes available to the plant. You can't burn your plant. It's wonderful. And think about this. I was reading a direction here and it says for like 100 ounces of soil, use like a cup of fertilizer or something. I don't remember what it said. Well, I looked at this, I go, how many ounces of soil is that? How in the world am I gonna know? So you don't have to worry about that. Add a cup in a container about this big. You're not gonna burn it. You're gonna get nice sustained growth. So organic's the way to go. Notice one other thing. You know the 3 numbers on the fertilizer bag? So that's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. Nitrogen is what makes plants grow like that. I always give that to my lettuce and things that I don't want to flower. I just want them to get big, yummy leaves, or, you know, on my banana trees, I give them high nitrogen so they grow like that. If you want something to flower, you want the second number higher than the first number, and that's phosphorus. That's what makes flowers happen. You know, you give that to your tomato, you get fruit. So in this one right here, I'm gonna have a lot of flowers in there. I want one that's for flowers or fruit. Either way, you're gonna get the same thing. So the numbers on this are 4, 6, 3. So if all I wanted was good growth, 5, 5, 5. Okay, so you're gonna mix that in first. All right, that's the work here. Okay, so let's see. Let's get this beauty right here. So I love geraniums. I just think they're one of the coolest plants there are, and that's really in the sunshine there. Now you can see it a little better. So, okay, I'm gonna pop that baby in there. So that's gonna add some really nice color in there. I never use even numbers when I plant containers, and almost never out in the garden. If you plant in even numbers, it tends to look formal and contrived. When you use odd numbers, almost always it kind of has a more wild, natural look. So, okay, I got a deadhead one right here a little bit. There you go. So let's cram this guy in there. So, all right, I'll just kind of stuff that in back here. Whoop. And so I would be putting a third in there. I'm not sure I'm going to try and cram that in right now. Now, let's get some hummingbirds into this container, eh? All right. So luckily the name's on there because I'm for Lantana is what this is. I can't believe I can't think the word Lantana. I love lantanas. They're really attractive plants. They just kind of work their way all through the container. They bloom all summer long, and hummingbirds are nuts for them. So cram some of those in there. This is getting to be quite a pretty container. Now there's one thing. So these are all the fillers. Now we need one more thing. We need spillers because it looks a lot cooler if something's weeping down over the side of the pot. So this is lobelia. There's a ton of spillers. You know, if I had to do this one again, I would use creeping Jenny because it has yellow leaves and flowers that would look really cool. So, so I'm not going to stick these in, but they'd be in between the plants. There'd be 6 of them in this little container by the time I divide them up. And this, I found a purple lobelia. I hope it's really purple. If it's blue, you're not even gonna see it, you know. So So, and there we've got it. Now, there's one last thing I want to warn you about, and that's about the spillers. Because I mentioned Creeping Jenny, which is real pretty with yellow leaves, yellow flowers. Bacopa has white flowers. I love that. And it's better behaved. Anything that says wandering or creepy. So there's Wandering Charlie. I think it has white flowers, if I remember right. Creeping Jenny, yellow flowers. They creep over the side. Anything with the name wandering or creeping, watch out. Because that means if they hit the ground in your garden, they are going to take off like a rocket ship. And I have seen so many people who used, like creeping Jenny or wandering Charlie, and they spend years trying to get that stuff out of their garden. So if this is just going to hit the cement, if it's out somewhere where if it hits the cement, it's not going to matter. But if you put this by the side of your garden and those little creepers get in your garden, you could have a little problem ongoing. So here's a nice look at this beautiful pot. I think it turned out, this is the work of a genius, if I do say so myself. I'm so humble. Okay, so one last thing, don't let the soil go right up to the lip of your pot, because if it does, you can't water it. The soil keeps coming out. I forgot something else too today, and that is, should you go out and get pebbles and put them in your pot? Mais non, as they say in France. No, don't do that. I used to do it with my grandma. We'd go out and get pebbles before we transplant a house plant or before we do a pot, because I gardened with my grandma a lot. And she always thought it made it drain better and keep the soil from going out. The problem is that if you put those pebbles in there, it totally messes up the drainage. We did studies when I went to horticulture college, and we had glass tubes. We put pebbles in there, and sometimes we just put soil. They drains 100 times better if you don't put the pebbles in there. So all the fines get clogged up around the pebbles. So you might lose a little soil when you water. Don't worry about that. Just add some more. After about the third watering, that'll stop happening. You won't have any more problems with that ever. So there's a pot there. And so do lots of pots. They're so darn fun. Mary and I have competitions who can do the best pots. Okay, I think that this would be a good time to take the first question if we've got some. Maybe someone could read the question for me, or.
Yeah, we do, Cisco.
All right.
So we have a question. Where did you get the blue lightweight pot from?
Okay, that blue lightweight pot, they have red and they have blue, and they're both gorgeous in my opinion. They're pretty cool pots. $25. I got it from City Peoples on Sandpoint Way. Now, Sandpoint Way, there's two City Peoples, one's on Madison, one's on Sandpoint Way. The Sandpoint Way one is really an Ace Hardware, but it has a little garden center attached to it that's quite good. I go down there all the time. I live really close to there. And one day I got there and they had a whole bunch of them out there, and I bought a bunch. So, and I've used them a lot over the years. So they're really a good pot. So, and nurseries carry pots, all kinds, but most are ceramic. But there are different plastic ones. But sometimes the plastic ones can cost as much as the ceramic ones. It's shocking. But remember, here's a little tip. If you're trying to save money, they almost always put them on sale in fall. They're going to get new ones in spring. So they want to unload the ones they've got because, if people like that newest thing, you know how that is. So in fall, watch out, because a lot of times they'll put the really cool ceramic ones on sale. But you're right. If you live on a balcony or something, one time I did a consult for this woman and she wanted me to check out her plants on her balcony. I walked out there. She must have had 40 pots on this balcony full of soil and big plants. And it was over Lake Washington. I started looking around thinking, if this goes, I'm diving, you know. So yeah, you don't want too much weight. Also, people often ask me, can I put something in part of the pot so that, you know, do I have to have soil all the way to the bottom? No, I prefer having soil all the way to the bottom. And sometimes when after, you know, having it in there all summer, the whole thing's full of roots. But if you really have to not have so much weight, or, you know, you don't want to use that much potting soil, don't use those styrofoam things. Don't use those. On a day like this where it's windy, they'll be at your neighbor's house at the end of the block before you know it hits you. They're horrible. So instead of using those popcorns or whatever they're called, I use like aluminum beer cans or something. And you just crush them and stick them in there. And then you put the soil around those. You can fill it halfway or a third, whatever you want. Put the soil around there because the roots could still find their way down through there, and it'll lighten it quite a bit, and it won't really interfere too much with the growth of the plant. So that's one way you could do it, and the beer cans won't fly down to your neighbor's house. Okay, all right, I'm going to show you something really quick, and then we'll go back to another question, okay? So I just wanted to show you a few of my favorite plants that are blooming out there right now that are attracting hummingbirds like crazy. I am hummingbird maniac. Mary and I love our hummingbirds so much. I can't show you right now, but I have a huge tree that's like over 40 feet tall back there. It's called a Chilean fighter tree. And people walking by start screaming when they see it. It's so full of red blossoms. They're almost this color right here. And so it's an Abathrum coccineo, a Chilean fire tree. You probably would have to buy that online if you want to try one. They get quite big and they hate pots. You can't grow them in a pot. But there are so many hummingbirds in my garden right now, and we have hundreds of other plants that attract them, that it's like a war zone here. You know? They're just battling it out every minute. So here's one of the plants that I just love, and I grow a lot of them. So this is what we call a woody salvia. There's a ton of these woody salvias. So so they have different names, but my favorite one is called Salvia hot lips. When you plant it this time of year, the flowers are just flaming red right there. Then as summer progresses, the flowers turn red and white. Each flower turns red and white. By fall, most of the flowers are white. And I'll tell you what, hummingbirds love this plant so much. Actually counted how many flowers were on my Salvia hot lip last August. 1,382,000,000. And they wouldn't let me cut off one branch like this to go show it a talk. They started dive bombing me, you know. They're totally crazy for this. Now, what do I do with my salvias? Most of them, like Salvia hot lip, they all come in different sizes. Salvia hot lips gets 4 feet by 4 feet. So in the spring, they only bloom on new growth. So if you don't cut them down, you're going to have all your growth way up on the top and out on the ends and none in the middle like this has. So what I do is in spring, once I see new growth near the base, I go ahead and cut them to 4 inches high. And already look at how this is blooming, growing back. Usually I do that early April. I've done it in March in real warm springs. This year I did it pretty early, right the minute April started, I was cutting these back. So this will get 4 feet by 4 feet at least by the end of the summer. So it's a fantastic plant. You want tons of these. And not only that, foliage smells really good. I don't know, it is sage. I don't know if you could cook with it though, but I wouldn't because I'd rather have the hummingbirds eat it. And fuchsia is another plant you want. So I can't remember which fuchsia this is. I have so many. Now these are hardy fuchsias. You plant them in the sun out in your garden. So not like, now the hanging basket fuchsias are great for hummingbirds too. But these things bloom all summer without stopping. And a lot of times they're still in bloom after Thanksgiving, which keeps life good because our Anna hummingbird, that's the bigger hummingbird, it's as green as my coat. Its whole head and gorget are bright red right now. That hummingbird stays year round. The other hummingbird we have is the Rufus hummingbird. It's orange color, really pretty. They're smaller. They're the tough guy in the garden. They chase me out of the garden and all the other hummingbirds out. And but if you want to keep the Anna's hummingbirds, the Rufus fly back to Mexico every year, 2,000 to 2,500 miles to Mexico, Central America. Then in the spring, they fly back, do you believe it? And 2,500 miles, 500 miles a day. So if you could plant things that bloom late into the fall, it keeps those Anna hummingbirds happy. And then I plant about 12 different plants that bloom during winter: witch hazels, Daphne odora, sweetbox, sarcococa, grevillea. So I have all these plants. If you want to know what to plant, go to Ciscoe.com, Ciscoe.com. This is for what to plant that'll bloom in winter to keep your Anna hummingbirds happy. So if you're like me and you travel in winter, you don't want to hang up a feeder, then the hummingbirds will feed off those. They all bloom at different times. There's these Mahonias, they're Oregon grapes from Asia. So go to Ciscoe.com, Ciscoe.com, go to tips, and then you'll see articles. Go to articles and you'll see Hummingbird Madness is a talk I've given at the Flower and Garden Show at different places. And the last 12 plants, no description, but at least it'll tell you the plants are all ones that bloom in winter and keep your hummingbirds happy. So if you feed them, you could feed hummingbirds in winter. But if you do, always keep the recipe the same: 1 part sugar, 4 parts water, and make sure that the nectar never freezes. If the nectar freezes, a hummingbird that's dependent on your feeder can starve to death in 1/2 hour in freezing weather. They have heated feeders now. They're from a guy in Oregon. Just put in your computer heated hummingbird feeders from Oregon, but you got to have a place to plug them in. But they're great. So, but hey, there's one last thing I want to tell you. You want single flowers. So see, these flowers are single. They're not big double flowers. Double flowers, when they hybrid them, they take all the nectar out of them. So they don't do you any good. Hummingbirds will be frustrated beyond Tweedle if you do that. So make sure that they're single flowers, and boy, the hummingbirds will love you for that. Okay, I think we should do another question here. We got one.
All right, we actually have had 4 questions come through.
I'll do a couple in a row.
Sure, let's do 2 first then. So the first one, it asks if it's okay to put new plants in pots with soil from last year.
Great question. And, I wondered about that because I ran the Seattle U Grounds Department. We had 94 big pots on campus that we would plant up. Every time security saw that trucks were going in the wrong place, they go, "Can you put a pot there?" And but all my gardeners loved it because they each got to do their own. But at the end of the year, you pull out all those annuals, and maybe I keep the centerpiece. Sometimes they even pull those out. And I used to have the guys bring in compost. We're composting in the spring when we replanted, or a lot of times we replanted in fall with winter plants in those, because there are annuals like, you know, pansies and things that bloom all winter long. But after a while, I realized if you can get the same potting soil that you used the year before, just try and get all the roots out and everything. When you get the old plants out, add new potting soil of the same kind if you can. Even if you can't, I'd still use potting soil, work it in good, and you're off and running. So that old soil is fine. Don't worry about it. You can just top it off with good new potting soil.
Thank you, Cisco. And then the second question is, we have someone in the chat who rescued a peony, and they put it in a pot and it hasn't flowered, and now it's the second year and still no flowers, and what they wonder what they can do.
Okay, peonies are kind of funny. So, and maybe that peony was in really rough shape because it had to be rescued. And, so peonies, in order to bloom, they need full sun and nice rich soil. So here's the trick I would do. And I've rarely ever grown peony in a pot. So it may be a little tricky growing them in pots, but I don't know. So I would say fertilize with alfalfa meal. Now, alfalfa meal is horse food. But way back when I was a kid, my grandma, she was the smartest gardener I've ever met. Her name was Maud Heuchera. That was her maiden name. She married Waldo Reichart, and there was no more peace in the family. But those two were a fiery couple. But the thing was, she somehow knew that if you add alfalfa meal around roses, peonies, delphiniums, dahlias love alfalfa meal. So I would work that into that pot. Now, I don't know how much room you'll have and how big the pot is, but if it's a pretty good sized pot, try and work in at least a cup of alfalfa meal around the roots of your peony, work them into the soil. And I'd also add a good flour, organic flour food at the same time you do that, work that in at the same time. Alfalfa meal is not real high in nutrition, but it's got all these micro ingredients and hormones and other things in it that tell your plant, bloom, you fool, bloom. And for my peonies, I only do it once a year. But on all my peonies, I work in a cup of alfalfa meal around them out in the garden. And I also add one, whatever amount, because usually the directions tell you how much to put around a certain size plant. And I work that in. And man, I think that'll make your peony bloom next year really well, if it's going to be happy in a pot. You know, peonies live for over 100 years. So they're not in a big hurry to start blooming anyway. You know, they figure I got lots of time before I raise a family. But I think if you do that, I think that'll be the key. And don't let it dry out too much. To make sure that peony's in as good sun as it can get. They are a sun-loving plant and don't like shade. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple other plants that really feed hummingbirds like crazy. So I bet you've never seen this guy before. When the sun shines on it, a lot of times the flowers, it shines right through the flowers and it looks like a Tiffany lamp. This is really a neat plant. So it used to be called Allium Bulgaricum. So now you know where it comes from, Bulgaria, but it also comes from Sicily and Greece. And they changed the name. I don't know why these people, these garden experts, scientists, now they do DNA testing. They got to change the name, hoping that people like me won't be able to remember what they are or say them. It's now called Nectaroscordum siculum. But it's in the allium family. This thing smells like an onion. Nectaroscortum means honey garlic, and Siculum means from Sicily. So, and I've heard now they're starting to move it back into the Allium family, so we may be able to call it Allium Siculum, which will be a lot easier. So anyway, this is a neat bulb. It can spread a little faster than you like, but it's easy to pull out. So don't worry about it. It's really pretty and it's easy as pie to grow, shade or sun, and the hummingbirds die for this. Evidently, we must have Italian hummingbirds around here. Oh man, they're all over these things. And I got a million of them and they just love them. So if you went in and said, you know, you could say Allium Bulgaricum, and I think nurseries would know. But if you said Allium Siculum, they might know. But if you say Nectaroscortum, if they have it, they'll know. Otherwise, well, what's that? So, and by the way, if you got too many, you just grab one and go, and usually the bulb comes right out. You hand it to your friend. They got themselves a Nectaroscortum Siculum. Okay, a couple other quickies here. And so I think this is really a cool plant. So Columbine, but I often don't show Columbine in my talks. You know why? See, this will grow in the shade, which is wonderful because you want things, if a lot of people don't have as much sun as I have at my house, and they're always going, well, how can that grow in the shade that will attract hummingbirds? I didn't cut one off because I couldn't get myself to do it because my bleeding heart, my Chinese bleeding heart, they get 3 feet tall. Valentine is gorgeous. One called Gold Heart with golden foliage. Those are great hummingbird attractors for the shade. You can find those at nurseries. But Columbine, they love Columbine. So why don't I show Columbine? Because they seed themselves everywhere. They drive me nuts because they come up right in the middle of one of my favorite perennials. They send a big taproot down. They're not easy to pull out of the ground. So if you've got a woodsy garden, you don't have a perennial border like I do, but you've got, a woodsy garden with maybe native plants or plants of Columbine, you'll get hummingbirds like crazy and you won't care where they come up. But I hate it when they come up right in the middle of my Delphinium or something. That just drives me nuts. So, okay, 2 more. Then I'll go back to questions again. So I bet you a lot of you know this plant. This is a Heuchera, coral bells we call it. When I was a kid, the Heuchera we all grew, the only one you could get was a wildflower from the United States called Heuchera sanguineum. And the flower, instead of being white like this or pink, was pure dark red. Sanguineum means blood red. And so then they started coming up with these cool ones with these colorful leaves. I just love these because you could put them all over your garden and make all kinds of combinations with other colors, So it's really a neat plant to have. But people would ask me, well, the hummingbirds like the flowers of Heuchera? I never really knew on these new kind with the colored leaves. So it so happened that we had company coming, so I made a big bouquet and put it on our my laptop just started to go down in the wind. So Barry ran out and caught it. So anyway, I made a bouquet and I had a lot of bold stuff, and you know how I love contrast. So what I did was I cut off a whole lot of flowers off different Heucheras, coral bells out in the garden. And I made this beautiful bouquet, 6 of us sitting around a 44-inch table. And my bouquet was full of these flowers and others. Hummingbirds started coming between us as we were eating at the table, going to the flowers at a Heuchera. So they like these Heucheras. The only problem was I was wearing a red sweater, and one of those darn hummingbirds kept trying to stick its beak in my ear, which is very frustrating when you're trying to enjoy a Brussels sprout casserole, but you can't win them all. Okay, we should see if there's another question here.
All right, we do have a couple more questions. And so the first one, someone was wondering what was the name of the peony that you showed earlier?
Okay, that peony is called Buckeye Bell, and it is a real winner. And I've had it for years. I don't remember which nursery I got that from, but you could even call around some of your favorite nurseries. I never call around when I want to plant because you're going to find something else you love anyway. But Buckeye Bell, it's an old one. So you got to hope they still carry it, but it's the best one. So I think you can get it. By the way, there's a new kind of peony out there now that you can get that's really cool too. They're called Ito peonies. And I didn't bring one in here, but they have really big flowers. They're a cross between herbaceous peony and tree peonies. And they're really cool. They bloom later and they bloom longer. And if you deadhead them, once they become very mature, they have extra buds and they keep opening flowers. It doesn't last forever, but it's longer lasting display than your average peony. I have Bartella, which is a giant yellow one, and I have Sonoma, I think it's Sonoma apricot, I think. And oh, so beautiful. You can't believe it. So look for those Ito peonies. It was a Japanese person during World War II who lived in Japan and was the only person on earth that could figure out how to cross a tree peony with a herbaceous peony. And you cut them back just like their herbaceous peony. And but unfortunately, we couldn't get them in the United States because we were at war with Japan at that time. And then when the war ended, you could buy them for a 1 gallon pot, $1,500. No kidding. They were, because it's so hard to do and they had to be crossed. We have something new now called tissue culture. So they just take a little chunk of the plant and somehow grow that in a test tube. And so now I bought Bartella, I paid $90. When I got apricot, Sonoma apricot, I paid $25 or get cheaper. Keep an eye out for those. They're really winners. They're great. Okay, Notre question, another question.
All right, and another question came in. Someone was wondering, how and when do you prune lilac trees?
Yeah, lilac trees can frustrate the living tweedle out of you, to say the least. So, and I will tell you, there are some great dwarf lilacs that can make life a lot easier for you than, with some of these tall growing ones. But if you start from the beginning with your lilac, the minute it blooms, what you do is you prune them right when the flowers have faded. So the minute the flowers fade, you want to prune them back. And so if this is your lilac branch and here's the flower up here, what you do is you cut them back a couple of nodes. So you're going to have other branches that grew last year. You don't want to cut them everything back because they bloom on what grew the year before. So you prune the ones that bloom, at least a lot of them, down so you can keep them lower because they get away from you. And then every year you should get good blooms. Plus you're cutting off the spent flower before it goes to seed. That tells the plant, I got to flower more next year, raise a family, So every year, if you do that, you can keep them pretty darn low and in pretty good shape. Eventually, they're going to get too tall on you. If it's a tall growing lilac, it's very hard to keep them down. But if you do that, that'll really slow that from happening. And then at some point, if the thing's too tall, you can take maybe a couple of the tall branches and cut them down to 1.5 feet from the ground. Leave some So you still get some blooms up there. The ones you cut will start to grow again. They're not going to bloom for about 5 years when you do that, but they'll start blooming, maybe 3 years. They'll start blooming again. And then you can cut those big tall ones down and keep that going. Lilacs live for well over 100 years, but individual big branches, they tend to rot out in about 50 years. So check at the bottom. If you feel rot, cut below the rot, and they'll come right back. So the dwarfs that I like, Miss Kim is a fragrant, spectacular lilac that stays small. You get about 12 feet, but that's about it. And there's one that Megan loved, a live a tweedle out of, and it was called Tinkerbell. A dumb name, but a beautiful plant. I guess it's a fun name too. So Tinkerbell's another good one. There's others too. These are Korean lilacs. Lilacs that grow in Korea don't get so tall. Do we have another question?
We do. We had one person ask about the name of the other peony, and so I'll just let folks know that we are recording this webinar, and we'll send out the link afterwards. So you're welcome to watch the webinar again at your convenience, and you can review all the different plant names that Cisco's mentioned. And then
Great.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Cisco.
And Ito is the Ito peonies are a whole big series of peonies that are crosses between tree and they're named after Mr. Ito that figured this out. And herbaceous and tree peonies. So there's a whole lot of really good ones, and they're selling them right now at the nursery. Do you want to get me a flower?
Yeah.
Mary's going to run out and get one off the Bart's-Tella, so I can at least show you what the flower looks like. They're good sized flowers, but I'll show you that in a few minutes when she comes back. She's got to go to the far reaches of the garden to get that.
In the meantime, we had one person wonder, what's your best remedy for slugs?
Okay, the best remedy for slugs. There's a couple of different ones. Now, just so you know, the old slug baits, Go West, Deadline, Corey's, all those slug baits, great things. All those slug baits were pretty dangerous. They're poisonous. And they killed puppies and cats and raccoons. And so I don't recommend ever using any of that. So there's the newer kind now. This one's called Sluggo. Other new ones that are out there, there's escargot, worry free. These have iron sulfate for the main ingredients. They're much, much safer. Now, there's a trick to using this stuff. I've had a lot of people say, I use that Sluggo stuff and it didn't really work. And by the way, I should add, it's pretty darn safe because the woman selling this at the Flower and Garden Show a few years ago was eating it all day long to show how safe it is. I haven't seen her since then. I hear she slobbers a little now, but other than that, she's okay. But so you don't want your dog to eat this. Don't ever leave the container where a dog could get at it. If it nibbled a little around the plant, that's not serious. But if it got at a container, the dogs have been known to eat whole containers full. So the trick to using this stuff is use a little often. So just a little teensy bit and put it around the plant. Do it every other day. You'll get good control. You put a bunch, it wears down really quick. Just a quick one to show you this incredible. I'm trying to find the lights reflecting on it pretty harshly, but this is Bart's-Tella. Look at the size of that flower, and they keep pumping them out too. So really a cool plant. It's an Ito peony. All right. So one other thing I'm going to show you really quick. I've got to go into my two other things about slugs that I want to show you. And one is that slugs will not cross a 3-inch strip of copper. So the nurseries carry copper foil. So if I had a big raised bed that had maybe a wood planter or something you could tape this on, then what you could do, you tape a 3-inch strip of copper. Now, why 3 inches? because a big slug can stretch his body out and go over it. So you don't want that to happen. So with a 3-inch strip of copper, what happens is, you know that slugs are mollusks. They're like gooey ducks and clams. And mollusk means stomach foot. So when they move across the ground, their stomach muscles, which they have hundreds of, oscillate really fast. So as they go across copper and that slime that they make, it generates an unbelievable amount of static electricity. So when the little guys try and cross that, they get a shock like you can't believe. I love the looks on their beady little eyes when they get the shock. And it doesn't kill a Marine, but they will not try and cross it. It hurts. They fall off and they just go, I'm not trying that again. One other thing, just you can also make beer traps. So you can get yourself some kind of container. I like these clear ones. They don't show up so much in the garden. And you put about a 1/2 inch of beer in there. I don't know if you have to go a whole 1/2 inch, but usually I like to do that. And now, a lot of people, what they used to do was they would take these slug traps and bury them even to the ground with the beer in them. Slugs fall in, have a great party, and that's goodbye slug, you know. Doesn't pay to have bad habits. So I don't do that because there is a really beneficial insect out there. I call it the eek squish bug. It's really called a crabbed beetle or a ground beetle. And it's those about 1 inch long, kind of black iridescent beetles. You pick up a log or a rock and out comes that beetle. They run really fast. So what do people do? Eek, squish. So that's why I call it the eek squish bug. That beetle has bad breath. The reason, it eats slugs. It eats baby slugs, little slugs, all kinds of slugs. I'm gonna get back, it's raining like, man, I'm getting under the umbrella here. So they devour slugs. They're like a lion in the jungle at night. They come out hunting for slugs. Most of them only eat little baby slugs, but there's one called the slug snail destroyer. Looks like it's walnut colored and kind of wedge shaped. That thing, I have seen it pounce on 6-inch slugs in the night. Oh, what a battle. Slime flying everywhere. More exciting than anything you'll ever see on nature. So we don't want to kill our eek squish bugs. If you bury this even to the ground, they fall in and they drowned in the beer. I had a friend who buried a bucket with a 1/2 inch of beer in it. I found 40 dead eek squish bugs in there. We don't want to do that. They're our helper. You can't buy them, but they're out in nature. So instead, cut 1-inch gaps in the top there, and then put a lid back on, and that'll keep the rain from diluting your beer in the trap. And also, I noticed that my puppy Fred was smiling kind of odd, and he was kind of staggering around in the garden. He was drinking all my beer. So if you do that, put a rock on top, you could prevent that from happening too. Remember this, you're asking the slug to go to happy hour on the way to the restaurant. If it goes to the restaurant first and has a drink on the way home, that's not going to do a lot of good because it's going to eat your plant first. So put 3 of these around the plant, that hosta or whatever you're trying to protect. And then that really does do a good job. Once there's about 5 slugs in here, I've seen slugs come look in the door and go, this does not look like my kind of establishment, and hit the road. So, once there's 5 slugs in there, dig a hole in the ground, throw the slugs and the beer in the hole, keep adding soil until it's the right height to plant a plant. The plant will grow like crazy. I don't know if it's the beer, the slugs, or the symbiotic relationship, but it's great fertilizer. Okay, is there another question?
Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat, so if it's all right, I'd like to ask one of my own.
Oh, sure.
So
Why not?
like you, I'm from Wisconsin, and when I lived in Wisconsin, I grew a lot of tomatoes in containers, and I had the easiest time of it. But out here in Seattle, I can't seem to grow a good tomato for the life of me, and I'm wondering if you have any suggestions.
Oh, boy, do I ever. And this happens to so many people because so many of us moved to Washington, you know, especially if you grew up in Wisconsin, anything to get away from the winter time, you know. So when I was a kid in Wisconsin, we grew the really big tomatoes. It took 3 guys to bring 1 tomato into the house, you know. Well, the problem is, as you know, we had hot, sunny days in Wisconsin. Here, we don't get many. I mean, 100-degree day in Seattle, Washington, or anywhere in this region is just an amazing experience, you know. So because of that, the trick to growing tomatoes, the first one is to grow cherry tomatoes. So yeah, they're not that big, but you get 1 million of them, and they're so good on a salad and even on a sandwich. You could do it, you know. So the trick is to get the ones that are really good. And the tomato that wins every blind taste test I do is Sun Gold. It's an orange tomato. And I used to have straight sideburns until the first time I picked one off the plant in the sun and took a bite of it. I've had curly sideburns ever since. Now, I'll tell you some of my favorite tomatoes. Stew peas. Sometimes it's called stupaqueta. I've heard it called different things, but I think if you asked for a stew peas tomato, they had it at Swanson's nursery when I went this spring. And I used to grow my own tomatoes and things, but I'm too lazy now. The nurseries do such a good job. So stew peas is really good. When early girl is so dependable, you get a fairly good sized tomato. You know, brandy wine's great. It's really big. The problem is you're not going to be eating those tomatoes till September. So maybe grow one just for fun, see if you get some, but grow lots of cherry tomatoes first. Now, the biggest problem people have growing tomatoes here, we put them out too early. So that the nurseries are full of them. You see them, they look great. You know, you buy that tomato, you bring it home. I grow them in containers and in our veggie garden. I like that, put them in containers because critters can't get them as easy. So if you have rats or anything that's going to eat them, deer love them. My container's not going to help for that. But you could put the container somewhere where the deer don't go in the evening, for instance. And if you don't have a lot of sun, you can put them on rollers, keep moving them around to where the sun is if you're working at home these days. So, but if you put them out before Mother's Day, usually, and we get really cold, miserable weather, it kills all the chlorophyll in your tomato. It turns kind of purple, never grows for the rest of the summer. Doesn't kill the tomato, but it won't perform. So you're much better off, leave them out there in nice days, put them in the unheated garage by a window during the day until temperatures warm up. I mean, really, today's not too cold. I think they're all right. But last night it got pretty cold. So if you do have tomatoes planted and you hear a really bad cold snap's coming, buy some of that stuff called row crop cover that you can get at the nursery and cover the tomato just for that night. Take it back off the next day. That'll make a big difference. And I always add about a cup. I use a container just the size of the one we planted the plants in. And I add a cup of organic tomato food. You can use roast food. It doesn't make any difference. It's the same stuff. And then if they're floppy, I plant them a little deeper in the pot. Tomatoes, one of the few plants it'll root on the stem, but pull off any little branches around there. Last thing I'd say about tomatoes is make sure you stake them because they don't stop growing except for a few very rare types. And make sure, so on every little branch pattern, so you got a branch union, here's your main one, you got a branch union. I only let 4 or 5 of the main little branches that come out of the branch union grow up. After that, they always keep trying to grow out of there. I just pick those off, pick them off all summer long. Otherwise, they get so crowded and they put more energy into growing than producing fruit. And usually that's the trick to growing good tomatoes here. The biggest trick is grow cherry tomatoes and don't put them out too early. Okay, I wonder if it's time to give away my book.
I wonder if I could get a shot of the embothrium.
Oh, hey, Mary's going to show you our embothrium here before I give away the book. So can
I'm
you
just-
sneak through here?
No, I'm just gonna
Oh,
go like
There
that.
it is. So you see that tree? That's up there at about 40 feet. So that whole tree is covered with those red blossoms like that. So you can get that online. If you could go Chilean fire tree, whereby, whatever. Far Reaches Farm sometimes has them. They do a really great job. They're out in Port Townsend. And oh, I wish I could think of the name of that woman's nursery from Oregon. She sells them at the Flower and Garden Show some years. No Flower and Garden Show this year, but Rock Ridge Nursery is another woman that does them really well. So either of those. So yeah, that's great. And I tell you, you get it if you got to plant the roots in the shade and let it grow into the sun. Never fertilize it. They come from an area in Chile that has no phosphorus, and you don't want to add phosphorus to overwhelm it. So it's great, though. You got to have one in your garden if you could do it. Okay, should I give away my books? So you're gonna, if you're the lucky person that wins, you get your choice between Ask Cisco and Oh La La. Okay, so now here's the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask a general question. The first person that raises their hand, so you got to raise the hand thing on your computer there. The first person that they see that raised your hand, you'll get a chance to answer my tough Cisco Garden Stumper question. Okay, so here's the question. Who thinks squirrels are edible? Has anybody rose their hand?
It looks like the first person I saw was Janice.
All right, Janice. So now I'm going to ask this question, and I guess you'll have to write in your answer or whatever. So, okay. Do hummingbirds eat bugs? Yes or no? This is a tough one. What do you think? Janice
answered
said
no.
Okay, Janice, you get one more try. Good comeback. Yes, hummingbirds love bugs. In fact, that's almost all that they feed their young, because the nectar is good job. Good job. I just saw her answer. Yes. So yes, the hummingbirds feed their young bugs because they're way higher in protein. Nectar has almost no protein at all. Here's something you can watch for that is so cool in your garden. So keep an eye on a spider web. If you see a spider web somewhere in your garden, you'll see the hummingbird hover right in front of the spider web. It's looking to see if a bug gets caught in the web. If it does, it swoops in and grabs it before the spider could do anything about it. If the spider gets huffy about it, it gets fed to the kids too. Oh la la. All right. So, all right, Janice, you just won a copy. You can tell the folks which one you want, Oh La La or Ask Cisco, and we'll get your address. And all right, Janice just wrote Oh La La. So, all right, we're going to send you Oh La La, Janice, and signed you. So just make sure they get your address over there and everything. Okay, here's the, oh, by the way, squirrels are edible, by the way, because when I was a kid, my brothers were hunters. They'd shoot these gray squirrels. Oh, and my mom had a rule, if they shot something, you had to eat it. My mom was not a great cook. And all I can tell you is squirrels do not taste like chicken. Oh, la, la. All right. Okay. So here's my next question. Who loves Brussels sprouts? My wife Mary's not raising her hand. Huh?
The first hand I saw was from Anne.
All right, Ann, you get your chance to win this plant, win a book, either Ask Cisco or Oh La La. Okay, and by the way, Oh La La is so funny that it'll even, it won't cure insomnia like Ask Cisco will 10 minutes at bedtime. All right, okay, here is your question. Would you rather be a male hummingbird or a female hummingbird? You only get 2 tries on this.
Female.
A male?
A female.
Female. One more try. Oh, let me tell you. So you got it. You would much, much rather be a male hummingbird than a female hummingbird. Male hummingbirds are the laziest bums on earth. The female makes the nest. She goes out and finds lichen and moss. She weaves it all together with spider webs that she weaves in. It's about the size of a half walnut. She lays 2 eggs in there. She's the one that's got to sit on the eggs, keep them warm, fight off predators, somehow feed herself. When those babies hatch, who do you think feeds them? Who do you think teaches them how to fly? Who do you think protects them from predators and finally kicks them out of the nest? During all this time, the male hummingbird has 2 jobs: protecting his territory and mating. My kind of job. All right, so make sure you let us know which book you want. And so we'll make sure that I'll sign that and send it to you. So I think this talk is about to end, and it's starting to rain so hard out here. That's probably a good thing, but I really, really enjoyed doing this with all of you folks today. And thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Cisco. We really appreciate it. I know I personally found your presentation very informative and especially entertaining and hilarious. So thank you. We really appreciate your time. And
hey, my total pleasure.
Oh,
Thanks
of course. We'll look forward to having you again soon.
Okay.
And thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. We will be emailing out an evaluation form, and we'd love to hear your feedback on this presentation, as well as any suggestions for future webinars. We'll also be emailing out a link to today's recording. As soon as it's ready, we'll put it online and send that link out. So probably within the next few days or so. If you have any questions about University House Wallingford, or if you would like a tour, please give us a call at 206-545-8400. Again, I'm Elliot Hack, the Community Relations Associate here at University House Wallingford, and this concludes today's presentation. On behalf of Ike, myself, and University House Wallingford, where life goes on and lifelong learning thrives, thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Cisco.
Bye.
Thank you. We hope to see you next time live and in person.
All right, it's a deal.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Take care.